We're back on our program, Jones and Company, and we're speaking with the president of the Bahamas Association of Athletic Associations, Mr. Drumeco Archer. And before we went on a break, Mr. Archer, we were talking about sporting development. We were talking about our ability, our capacity in the country to be able to maintain our national stadium, to be able to put our money where our mouth is, to divert resources, to be able to grow the sport of track and field in our country. And you mentioned earlier, you said just on our break that it's a spectacular thing, or I can't remember the exact word you used, but it is a spectacle in terms of where sports, especially track and field, has taken our country in such a short time. And I think in our last segment, the most interesting example of that would have been exactly the point you made in terms of 10 years ago, or when we first held the IAAF World Relays event. Now you mentioned the name change, but then it would have been IAAF, and we had no idea, or we didn't know how to put on a first-class sporting event. And today we are hosting events. We have, I believe, a world-class stadium. And you mentioned a point that a lot of people, I think, don't consider, which is expansion. And we look at this village, the sporting village that we've developed around the stadium. And some people will argue that, yes, well, it had a lot to do with Mr. Christie and his personal ambitions, being an avid sportsman. And many will tell you, well, it started way before that. It started with them turning the old hangar into the Kendall Isaacs Gymnasium, or them taking the old Oaksfield Airfield and really turning that into a more sports-friendly environment with different facilities. The Betty Kelly Kenning pool that we have here. But in terms of track and field, and I don't want to compare it to other sports, but I think Bahamians have outperformed and outshined, especially when it comes to track and field. Even if you look at and people will make the argument all the time, but as a proud Bahamian, as a patriotic Bahamian, I love it. The fact that they'll say that we've won the Olympics per capita for the last last several Olympics. And people will say, if we go to the Olympics and we get just one gold medal, we've won because of our population size. But really, when you think about it, it is miraculous that a country with just 400,000 people could put together a contingent that can compete on the world stage and could return home with gold medals. Now, do you think that we celebrate athletes, or we reward them as a country as we should, or commensurate with the long hours of training, the money that they have to invest into their personal development? Do we really, reward them appropriately?
Well, even if I didn't think so, if I had to say no, then I would be lynched. But what I would say is this. This is a growing country. It is a growing sport. Right. Track and field has been one of the leaders in my time and in times before me. But even more compelling is that track and field has been that only because of sparse resources too. To have a professional football team is near impossible. The use of facility and the equipment requirements are just exponential as compared to track and field. And so I think for small and developing countries, track and field has been the staple event because it's the most accessible. Yep. Again, track and field is grassroots in nature, and because it's grassroots in nature, I don't think that we get as much from the sport, from corporate Bahamas, as we can. And the reason I say that is because we look at success, but we don't look at the process towards success. And so we celebrate the great accomplishments of our athletes who have achieved at the highest level. But to get there, requires enormous support from governments as well as from communities. I just don't think enough is being done at that level. It is sexy to say that I'm sponsoring Shawnee Miller. It is not sexy to say that I'm sponsoring Little Christian. And I think that we need to sensitize the country that in order for us to become even big and better, that it requires resources, not just from the government, as I mentioned before, but requiring the resources of the community.
Right.
And so the same can be said for all sport. Track and field has been the beneficiary of this being the sport of all sport, in the sense that from its inception, when you had nothing else, you could still run through the streets and still become something, right? But I couldn't swim if I didn't have a pool. Yeah. And I couldn't be a Tiger Woods if there weren't sufficient golf courses. I see that more is being done in those areas, but much, much more needs to be done for the wider expansion of sport, not just track and field. I'm not just a purveyor of track and field, I'm a purveyor of all sport, because I think that we have giftings across the spectrum. We simply haven't done sufficient. And so, you know, we talked about me. I started track and field through DeVoe Street. My stepfather used to go in Windsor Park to exercise in the morning, and he would say, "Come, Drumeco, let's go." And I would go and just run around Windsor Park, or sometimes walk around Windsor Park. And I began to have an affinity for the sport. I was never part of a track club when I was younger, but I went to Our Ladies, and I think the Catholic system had sports day and encouraged athletics in its physical education program. Right. I was across the street from the school, and so I had the benefit of going and jumping in their long jump pit, or the makeshift pit, or running in the schoolyard. Well, I think that, you know, things have changed, but I think that the principle really doesn't change. Right. If we create a space for these activities to flourish, you'll see a greater manifestation of young kids wanting to be a part of it, being attached to it. But you're only as good as the support that is given. We have seen a change in our sport from a small handful of people who had an interest in the sport to thousands of people flooding very small facilities, right? And so it's become a hazard. And it's because more parents are more intimately involved. My parents never even knew what I could do in the sport. Never came to a track meet. Never even knew what I was doing. Mm-hmm. Now it's changed. It's changed where parents are more intimately involved. And so I think that has been a credit of the sport as well. Right. The engagement of our fans and the engagement of parents. But still there's more needing to be done where resources are concerned.
It definitely is a positive step in terms of raising the profile of the sport in the country, and it attracting more fans, spectators, supporters, and those who have a legitimate interest in not just the sport, but the personal development of athletes. And when we look around, and we've talked about aquatics and golf, and I would even throw baseball in there.
Baseball, definitely.
That through philanthropy and you know, those who have diverted resources or even pledged resources to the development of those sports, that you see the Betty Kelly Kenning pool, you see the which was paid for largely, I believe, by the Kelly family. You have the golf course, the Blue Hills Golf Course, that has been to a great extent
by
Mr. Flowers. You look at the JBL and facilities, and can we look in track and field anywhere and see where philanthropy has led to, you know, the building of some sort of facility like that?
Well, sadly, without the intervention of government or international governments, right. We have not seen that. Right. And that's really the point that I make. Right. One day I hope that there can be a focused effort in developing facilities privately for the benefit of the Bahamian community.
There are those in this country with tremendous wealth, Mr. Archer. Is there no way that we can get some of these wealthy people to perhaps put an indoor stadium or something in Bimini, for example, or get them to develop a track at one of the government schools or something where people can train? And I just was speaking to somebody the other day who was speaking about I think it was a study they did some years ago on the lottery system in Barbados, where a certain amount of the winnings, of the proceeds, are taxed, and that money goes directly to sports in Barbados. That's what I think we need in this country. If we can get it, I guess, on the dashboard of those really who are in decision-making positions, to be able to say, okay, now we've seen that we've produced world-class Olympians that have picked up sponsorships internationally from Puma, Adidas, this one, that one. Why is it that we cannot recreate that for more people, more children, especially within our inner city? We're looking at a problem in our country now where there are too many children that are at risk, that are going wayward and involving themselves or becoming involved in criminality. And a lot of it is because we do not have, or we have not provided the facilities and the opportunities to get even more children, even seeing the wisdom in it and seeing the benefit in it. But I don't think we've given that opportunity to as many children as we can.
Well, I think you've said it better than I could ever say it. But I think that is also the push and the ambition of our organization, to sensitize, to engage, and to make ourselves available to opportunities for young kids. And there is no greater reward for a country than when we see opportunities that abound not just at a particular level, but at every level. And
right.
That, I think, creates a more sustainable society,
right.
a more well-adjusted society.
How do you identify talent in track and field athletes? How do you look at a young Usain Bolt, a young Stephen Gardner? Let's talk about some field athletes, a young Superman, what's his name? Lee Van Sands, I forgot his name. Superman Lee Van Sands. How do you look at one of them and tell, what that person can do with just a little attention from a coach, or if we send this person to the right training? How do you see that?
I suppose
so early on in a career.
There's some experience that you would have to have, I suppose. But just look at the physicality of the athlete, of the individual, the way he is structured, the way the athlete moves. Is the athlete a fast twitch? Does he move fast? But does he move awkwardly? Or is his mechanics good or bad? And I'd like to identify people with bad mechanics who have natural physical qualities or characteristics that could make you an exceptional athlete. Mm-hmm. And I suppose it really has a lot to do with the event as well. So for me, if you look at Shawnee Miller and Stephen Gardner and Avard Monka and Frank Rutherford and Stephen Hanna and Mike Sands, just to name a few, and a Pauline Davis, mm-hmm. they all have a particular kind of build, a Leslie Miller.
Yeah. Kind of physique.
They're built in a particular way. You see, that tells you why I couldn't have been an Olympic athlete, right? But I think that they're avatars of the sport. And if you go beyond our shores, you see similar characteristics like Elaine Thompson and Usain Bolt, Noah Lyles. These are all physical characteristics that you pay attention to. And something that came to focus for me was when I looked at Jamaica, when I looked at even Guyana at the Caribbean Games, they all had a particular body structure. Remember, we all came on the boat the same way, deposited to different islands, right, but from the very same place. So the genetic pool really hasn't changed. It's really how we harness and manifest and put resources into it.
But perhaps there could be certain things that lead to different physiques. I'm sure when you look around, especially at the diet of different people on different islands. I don't know, especially when it comes to New Providence, everybody is Wendy's, KFC, Burger King, McDonald's. It's not necessarily like that, I believe, in some parishes of Jamaica, definitely in parts of Guyana, Trinidad, where the diet perhaps may be a bit different.
You're absolutely right. So there was a joke that I had with an athlete, and there was this handing over of the gift from the People's Republic of China to the government of the Bahamas. I think that took place earlier this week. And there was a reception where the athletes were invited, and there was one athlete, her plate was laden down, I won't call her name, and she had cracked lobster and this nice fried food, right? Yeah. So I ran over, and she had some guava duck. So I ran over and I helped myself. She said, "Mr. Archer, what you doing?" I said, "I'm taking the food you shouldn't be eating." And I think the point is well made. Our athletes are not in the habit of eating good food. So diet and nutrition has become a very important issue for us. Usain Bolt talks about it is the yam that makes him run fast. I think it's just good diet that makes you the better athlete. And so there is a focus there. We are in talks with the Ministry of Agriculture to talk more about the provision of fruits and vegetables for our program. And Minister Campbell has seen that as an opportunity for track and field and sport to become the brand ambassadors for healthy living throughout our communities. And I think it's a wonderful initiative there as well.
You'll be in Paris this summer?
I think so. Yeah, it is the plan to be in Paris. It turns out to be perhaps one of the most expensive Olympic endeavors in the history of the Olympic Games. And so it's very expensive, not getting there, but getting to the games. Right. But yes, I will be representing track and field. Right. And we will be well represented on the track and on the field. Right.
And I'm sure you anticipate that perhaps we'll, at least, I'm convinced.
Don't put no pressure on
I'm positive that we'll get at least one gold medal, which means we'll win the Olympics, as we said previously.
As we have in the past.
But do you anticipate that perhaps in terms of our medal count, we can show some sort of progress or some sort of, moving to higher heights, so to speak?
Look, Christian, we often have a conversation about medal count, right? And in my experience, what I used to do then, I probably wouldn't do now. And that is not to make a prediction. But I think that it is well within our grasp to amass more medals than we have had in the history of our sport at the Olympic Games.
Right. But I mean, you've seen where we have had athletes, and I've not followed Shanae Miller-Weibo's career as of lately, but we have those such as Stephen Gardner, and I'm not sure whether he's back from injury, from recovery. If we look at, for example, I believe Devin Charlton recently made a new world record. Mm-hmm. So you can't look at these athletes and their performance and say that, it's probably more likely that they will medal in these events.
So there was a wonderful article by Sports Max. I think it came out yesterday or today that I shared, and I'll share it with you, where Shanae Miller talks about how excited she is to be returning to the global stage, and that stage will be debuted at the World Athletics Relays here in the Bahamas, where she will be running with her team in the mixed relay. I think that it's a wonderful story for her because, as you would be aware, I think it was only 10 weeks after the birth of her child that she attempted to make her return back to track and field just a year ago. So she seems to be in fine form. But I think that Stephen Gardner, who was expected to break the world record last year, I won't make any predictions, but I think that he will be at world record pace this year. And Devin Charlton, a world record holder this year, we expect that she will do enormously well over the 100-meter hurdles. Last year, I think she placed 4th, and I'm expecting her to medal. Right. No pressure. So
Right.
you're forcing me to put pressure on the athletes.
Right. Now, I wouldn't
But
put pressure, especially on a hurdler. In high school, I did the 110-meter and 300-meter hurdles, and it
and you
wasn't
know with
easy.
pressure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the Olympic Games is going to be something special with the use of technology, with the use of the integration of athletes really being a part of the promotion of the event. It makes it very personal. You learn the stories of the Noah Lyles and the Femke Bowles and the Shakira Richardson and so many other great athletes that you almost feel as though that they're your friends.
Yeah. Yeah, especially, and I guess it should be, and I've never been, or what do they call it? Starstruck, really, when you get around these people. But it would be interesting, to see Usain Bolt at one of these events. And I'm sure there are different people who are giants in the sporting community that, given your involvement in track and field, they've come to be recognized as friends. You're on that basis with them.
They're humans. They're
Right.
normal people just like me and you. They eat cheese, doodle, and cornflakes.
Right.
Carl Lewis will be at the World Relays. He was one of my favorites when I was growing up as an athlete. But he's the ambassador of the World Relays, and I think that if you walk along the streets, you'll have an opportunity to get a perspective of what being at this level of competition really means to him and his story.
Right.
As you know, he was one of the most celebrated relay athletes in the history of the sport.
Right.
And so it's exciting to have him here as well.
Do you think you will seek re-election as president of the B3As?
No,
No?
no. Well, our constitution, we've gone through constitutional reform. And we have a limitation of 2 consecutive years of being leader. And so this is my final term, not 2 consecutive years, 2 consecutive terms.
Okay.
And this is approaching the end of my 2nd term. But I'm never leaving the sport. I'm never leaving sport to the extent that I see the value of it beyond just the leadership. And as I've done in the past, I've led from behind and consult and cheer on and be a part of the sport from a different dimension and perspective.
Right.
I'm at the track every day, not because I'm president, but because I think it's just so necessary to be there and to learn the athletes and understand who they are and their background. And I think it humanizes what the sport really represents, and it's really representing communities where there are people who are troubled, there are people who come from broken homes, there are people who are poor and who just can't afford. And when you see the sport from that perspective, it's hard to walk away from it.
Right. Are there people within the association that have the expertise, that have the knowledge, I suppose, industry knowledge, the grasp and the command of their history of the sport to be able to lead after your tenure as president?
So I suppose they may have said that same question may have been posed to Mike Sands and to Rosamund Carey, who I followed. And so if I had to say no, then it wouldn't have left room for people like myself. And so what we do every day is to transfer knowledge, to bring people closer to the sport. Some of those are transient, and oftentimes because they have a special interest, like my child is in the sport. But I started the sport even before all my kids ever thought about being in track and field. And so we are really looking at people who are committed to the construction and the renovation and the building of our sport. And so I would say yes. There are quite a number of people who seem to be interested in becoming the leader of this organization. It is a very, very demanding organization, and I consider it to be my jealous mistress. It takes all of my time, and so I'm thankful for an understanding wife, Chiquita, who has been hand in hand with me in the sport. She has been a supporter beyond me. In fact, there are many who say, I think I like her more than I like you. And I said, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That takes the pressure off of me.
Yeah.
But it is demanding, and what I say to anyone who wants to take over the reign of the sport is that be prepared to take plenty blows, but be resolute in your stance. It is a sport that is a microcosm of society, and so it can be harsh, but you have to set your mandate and live through it and live by it.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Archer, we've come to the end of our program, but I thank you for being here, and I thank you for engaging us in this lively conversation this morning on the B3As, bringing this information us, at least for me, and letting me and our public know exactly what the B3As is, the responsibility of you as president, and reassuring us that at least for the remainder of your term, the B3As is in good hands.
I'd like to think so.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. And of course, I just want to encourage the country to come out to the World Relays. It will be historic in nature. It will be an expose of all things Bahamian. There will be a cultural experience that I think that the country should be proud of. And it will be aired live through our host broadcasting corporations around the world. Yeah. And so you will see the likes of DMAC and NCLS and KB and all of the famous Bahamian relics in music and entertainment. Yeah. As well as Junkanoo. We have an all-star Junkanoo group who will be performing throughout the program. And there's no place like the Bahamas when it comes to track and field through Junkanoo. Yeah.
Well, thank you, sir. And thank you to our viewing and listening audience. We thank you for tuning into this program, Jones and Company, this evening. Have a good night.